Hi and welcome back to Fear Me It's Brie. I'm Brie and I don't know what episode we're on because it has been 2.5 weeks since I last got on and recorded, so I'll have to check on that to put it in the thumbnail. I was on vacation for the last 2-ish weeks, so I'm still a little bit out of the loop, trying to come back into the loop. I was checking up on some stuff, but not to the degree that I normally would be, so bear with me if I'm a little behind on some of the things I'm going to talk about, but they were things that I found interesting and that I wanted to talk about because I didn't get a chance to when they were like brand spanking new. So we're going to do that. We are also going to talk about how Netflix, Disney, all those places, I guess The Witcher Season 3 bombed on Netflix and people hate it. And they've decided to do what any good company does when fans say, hey, we don't like that, and blame the fans. So we're going to look at a Hollywood Reporter article about that because I just thought it would be a fun kind of aside. We're also going to look at the light bulb ban because it's dumb and it's like, okay, whatever. But it's ridiculous enough that I want to look into it. We're going to be looking at the warehouse in California that was a secret Chinese lab. And then we're going to be looking at Meta removing news from Facebook, Instagram, and all of those platforms in Canada. So before I start, you can find me at Fear Me It's Brie on Instagram and Twitter. Instagram is I'm not going to say my happy place because that just sounds so dumb, but Instagram is more of a happy place where I post images and fun stuff. Twitter is obviously Twitter. Actually, no, I'm sorry, X, whatever we're calling it now. I'm just going to call it Twitter for the sake of my brain. That's where the more spicy takes and things like that and politics and all the blah goes. So you can follow me at Fear Me It's Brie on both of those platforms. I'm on mines as well. And I do try and upload the show to Rumble, but I have not been great with that as of late. So I'm going to start though, and we're going to jump right into, I think I'm going to start with the light bulb thing first, just because it's like the lesser of the weevils in this story. And also, I just happen to see myself. I don't know what is going on with my lighting. We had to unplug stuff and plug everything back in. Got back from vacation and, I turned everything on today to do this. And then I looked around me at what I look like up here in my little OBS, and I was just like, yeah, something is very off about that. I didn't change any settings, but I guess it's just been so long since I've used the lights. They must have defaulted to something. So I tried to mess with it. I'm going to have my husband mess with it tonight, and hopefully he's going to fix it for me because every time I see myself up there, I'm just like, whoa, okay, that's bad lighting. So hopefully he can fix that for me tonight because I will shamelessly plug that I'm going to be on Daily Wire Friends, which is a Daily Wire fan podcast. So it's fans of the Daily Wire that discuss topics, hosts' opinions, things like that. That will be tonight at 9 p.m. EST on the YouTube. And you can find me there when the show is done. And that is a live broadcast, unlike my pre-recorded show, which is very convenient for me to pre-record, but later on I will be live with them. So you can check that out. But yeah, lighting aside, hopefully I have that fixed though before that because this really is stressing me out. And I can actually, when we record that, I can see myself because of the Zoom call that we're all on. So it stresses me out more. And I'm also watching the live to keep an eye on the chat and like respond to people. So I actually see what I look like 24/7 when we're doing that. And the lighting is really like grinding my gears right now. So I'll try and fix that before tonight. But we're going to talk about incandescent light bulb bans. So again, some of these headlines are a little old, but I just wanted to throw my wrench in the spokes and just rant about them. So I have an article from The Hill pulled up. That's what we're going to start with. 4 things to know as full enforcement of incandescent light bulbs I can't talk today. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I'm coming back into this after a few weeks and my brain's just not in this mode. And I also have only had 1 coffee today. That might also be why. Definitely having some when I edit the video after. 4 things to know as full enforcement of incandescent light bulb ban begins. The Biden administration started to fully enforce its ban on most incandescent light bulbs this week. The rule, which effectively cemented the switch to LED lights for most consumers, was finalized last year, but is making headlines again as the government will now fully penalize industry violations. Here are 4 things you need to know about the rule. So my job that I worked at in like I think I left there in 2018, sounds about right. I worked there from like 2015 to 2018, this specific job, and they changed all of their overhead lighting from incandescent to like fluorescent and LED or whatever. LEDs, I believe it was. I would get such bad headaches the minute I would walk into that room, or that building, especially because there were no windows. It was a department store, big department store, no windows. So the only light you're getting is literally those lights. And I noticed how bad my headaches got when they switched over to the LEDs versus the softer light they had before, which my husband was like, they could remedy that and just pick a softer light. But for some reason with LEDs, they always go right to like the most glaring, brightest instead of using the softer ones, which if they did that, okay, whatever, do what you want to do. But for some reason, they always use the harshest ones. I guess because they're the brightest. I don't know. But LEDs, as I'm surrounded by them, do mess with my head. Usually I have to wear glasses if I'm going to be like in this kind of scenario for a little while. I just never do because I don't like how I look in them. But I should, because I usually get a headache after this. But anyway, nobody is coming into your house to rip any remaining incandescent bulbs from your shelf. The Energy Department rule will penalize violators who stand to profit, including manufacturers, distributors, and retailers, not consumers. So like Walmart. When it finalized the rule last year, the department said it would start off its enforcement with the manufacturers, importers, and private labelers, but would allow more time for distributors and retailers to sell through the bulbs they already had on hand. The department started to fully enforce rules for the first group of players in January, while distributors and retailers began to face warning notices that month and reduced penalties in March. This phase ended July 31st, a department spokesman confirmed. With full enforcement now taking effect, distributors and retailers could have to pay up to $542 per violation, which could add up if large quantities of bulbs are being sold. So like Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot, all those places where you'd get incandescent light bulbs. Can you imagine, like, say 100 people purchase them, 100 times 542 per violation? Do they mean per bulb, per purchase, per whatever? Either way, that's insane. I literally tweeted the other day, I was like, it's like prohibition, but with light bulbs. So give it like 10 years and it's going to be repealed. It is expected to cut planet warming emissions. I don't know about you, but where I am, we have had one of the coldest summers that we have ever had. We had about a week where it spiked and got pretty hot. And then it's been like fall again. It's raining right now out my window. So I don't know. I think it's a lot of bull because they're like, oh, these horrible temperatures. But the wet bulb temperatures, the dry bulb, whatever it is they're complaining about, those places have those temperatures anyway. This isn't new for them, right? For us, it's an insanely cold summer. We had, like I said, we had 1 week that was kind of miserable. I remember my husband and I were like, all right, we got to put the AC in. I don't care if it costs extra. We got to just cave and do it. We ran it for 2 days and then we had it off again for a month because it just had a cold sweep again. But I digress. The rules are expected to be a positive for the planet. The Energy Department projects that over the course of 30 years, they will cut carbon emissions by 222 million metric tons. 30. So when I'm 65, we'll see help like that. This has helped us. Okay, whatever. This is the equivalent of the carbon dioxide emissions generated by about 28 million homes in 1 year. The emission reductions would come as a result of the smaller amount of energy needed to power LED bulbs rather than incandescent bulbs. Andrew Delaski, executive director of the Appliance Standards Awareness Project, said rules like this, that aim to bolster energy efficiency, are one of the essential pillars to a successful approach to combating climate change. The key thing about efficiency is that it needs to be done at a huge scale, and appliance standards are the best tool to drive efficiency at scale to make sure that the products in a given marketplace include technological innovations that cut energy waste. It is projected to save consumers money on their electric bills. If that's true, I am okay with that because our central power company that we go through, that most of the state goes through, went up, I think in January, 40%. And then they're expected to go up again, I think, by the end of the year. I'm not sure what the percentage is there, but essentially we live in a 2-bedroom apartment. Our electric bill when we moved in for the first few months consistently was around $80. Now we're looking at $160 without the AC on. So yeah, I wouldn't mind if that went down a little bit, but we will see if this actually does something for that. The Energy Department projects the proposed rules will save consumers nearly $3 billion per year on utility bills and also provide savings for households, schools, and businesses. Americans may also have to buy fewer light bulbs because LED bulbs can last between 25 and 50 times longer than incandescent bulbs, according to the department. It started off bipartisan, but has become more controversial. The push for energy-efficient light bulbs and energy-efficient broadly began as a bipartisan effort. A 2007 law signed by then-President George W. Bush established new efficiency requirements for light bulbs and a set goal of an incandescent phase-out, the New York Times reported at the time. However, as years went on, the issue became more politicized. In 2019, then-President Trump rolled back the Obama-era efficiency rules. I thought it was Bush that did that, but whatever. Okay. When the Biden administration moved ahead with the ban last year, Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm described it as part of a suite of actions to help lower energy costs and keep money in the pockets of the American families while reducing our nation's carbon footprint. And as they say, you are the footprint that they want to reduce, not the light bulbs. Just remember that. But it has been met with some Republican backlash. Joe Biden and Democrats, extremism knows no limits. House Republicans campaign tweeted over the weekend, sharing an article about the bulb ban. Republicans have also sought to go after what they've described as an assault on American home appliances for referring to certain efficiency rules, and have particularly targeted attempts to make stoves more efficient as part of this effort. Yeah, I think so. Like the light bulb thing, it's like whatever. If you want to switch over to LEDs, switch over to LEDs. But the fact that the government is banning and fining people for using the alternative to them is what's sketchy to me, because it's like, why do you care what light bulb I use? And that they're banning businesses and cracking down. Like, it's literally, it's prohibition with light bulbs. They'll be back, I'm sure. I have a feeling people will just be like, this is really dumb. They'll figure out it was more profitable to use incandescent somehow. And it's just a dumb ban, because it's like, why are we doing this? The gas stove thing is really stupid. That's one that I'm actually like, I care about. Granted, I have an electric range because that's what the apartment had when we moved in. But I've grown up on a gas stove. Most people I know have gas stoves. They're great. You can use them when the power's out. Be careful, though. I shouldn't have said that. Just in case somebody's like, haha, I'm going to light this. But it's ridiculous, genuinely, that they're focusing on this kind of stuff when there's worse things that they could be focusing on. But no, light bulbs and stoves, that's what's important. So we're going to move on from that one because it's stupid. And we're going to hop over to, I do have a couple of Daily Mail articles. The first one is the one about the utility warehouse in California, and it's kind of a long one, so I might not go through the whole thing. I hadn't decided yet, but I also might. It's not that bad, I guess. We can go through it. And I'm also going to shrink down my screen because for some reason, I like using Daily Mail because granted, they have their biases and their like weird stuff in them, but for what it is, they'll actually be like, all right, here's the facts. Whereas if you try and use CNN or you try and use Fox News or you try and use any of those American outlets, they all have such a bias, which yes, this one has a bias, but they'll let their biases cloud their journalism. Whereas usually Daily Mail, you can get information out of them and then what you will with it is your own. So we're going to hop over here. This is a slightly older article than the one that I was originally going to do, but I decided to go with this one anyway. So an assuming warehouse in California turns out to be a illegal Chinese-run virus laboratory that was genetically engineering mice and experimenting with HIV, herpes, and malaria. That's just fantastic, isn't it? So do not enter. This is what it looked like. Just looks like a crappy warehouse. The warehouse was filled with thousands of vials of disease, blood, and tissue. A lot of those, apparently, the coolers and stuff they were in were broken, so they were just like festering there. And there were like vials of plasma and vials of blood, and people were like, I don't know why they have these, but they're here and they're festered. So that's creepy. Officials also uncovered about 1,000 dead and dying lab mice used in testing. And photos show grim conditions inside illicit Chinese-run virus lab. Maybe we'll look at that. Maybe we won't. A central California city is reeling after a nondescript warehouse turned out to be an illegal lab with deadly pathogens, including coronavirus, HIV, and malaria. If it were not for an errant house sticking out of the back of the warehouse last spring, city officials would not have known that a shady biotech company with links to China had set up shop there, filling it with industrial freezers, hundreds of vials of viruses, and about 1,000 dead and dying lab mice. What is this, Fear the Walking Dead? Is that how that starts? I can't remember, genuinely. But, like, Fear the Walking Dead starts out in LA, and there's just, like, I don't remember. It's been so long since I watched it. I could be wrong. The lab was run under a company called Prestige Biotech, unlicensed for business in California, whose president, Ziquin Yao, said he was the successor to the now defunct company Universal Meditech Incorporated. However, officials dispatched to address the link to the companies turned up at an empty office building or address in China that could not be verified. Interesting. The months-long investigation resulted in early July the proper disposal of all dangerous chemicals and substances, labeled and unlabeled. While officials note that there is a probe into the origins of the lab is ongoing, they claim people surrounding the area are safe. I mean, they're always going to claim that, even if they're not. Like, you know, no one's going to be like, we have a chemical spill downtown LA or wherever it is, because you're going to have people panicking. You're going to have people rushing. Oh, we got to get out of here. We got to get out of here. They're going to keep it as quiet as possible. They're not going to tell you if there's actually a problem. Right? While officials say the immediate danger has been resolved and power has been cut to the building, there will be lingering concerns about possible contamination in the area from improper waste disposal and leakage of dangerous bacteria and viruses that could pose health dangers to Reedley residents. The black market type lab operating in the sleepy town of Reedley, California, was brought to official attention in early March when a code of enforcement officers driving down the street noticed a garden hose sticking out of a building where it should not have been. That's really funny and so extra. Because, like, code enforcement, sometimes it's, like, to the point of ridiculousness where you're like, really? I remember my dad got in trouble because he had one, I think, officer, like, I can't remember if they didn't care what it was, but he built this beautiful granite mailbox. Not mailbox, but, like, the post. It was beautiful. And he's in an area where it goes from 35 to 45 quickly or something like that. And I want to say it was the code enforcement officer changed or something and noticed it. And they were like, you have to take that down, sir. Because they were strict about, like, oh, well, I know this is the area where the sign literally is, and it starts at the 45, but if someone got in an accident, and then he had to fill in a ditch because of it too that nobody cared about, but I guess they just got like a really strict code officer or something all of a sudden. So some of the stuff that they get you on is so stupid, but it's funny that, like, that's what got them, is like, that hose shouldn't be there. It shouldn't be attached to that building. I'm gonna have to call you in. Like, it's just so weird that they did that. That's kind of funny to me. A garden hose sticking out of a building where it should not have been. So, like, was the spigot not on the right side of the house? Was it supposed to be over here? Like, I don't get it. Was it sticking out of a window? Okay. This lucky catch thrust into motion a combined state, local, and federal probe on that one that Reedley City Manager Nicole Zieba had never seen before. I just thought I wasn't recording, and I was like, no. But we're good. We're good. I looked at the wrong counter. Miss Zieba said, this is an unusual situation. I've been in the government for 25 years, and I've never seen anything like this. A warrant issued soon after the official happened across the code violation allowed those in government to search the nondescript building, where they were shocked at what they found. In one room were about 1,000 inhumanely stored white lab mice, roughly 200 of which were already dead. According to Assistant Director of the Fresno County Department of Public Health, Joe Prado, the lab was conducting tests on the mice that would help develop COVID test kits found on site. Mr. Prado said they were utilizing laboratory mice to see whether or not the COVID test kits were actually testing for COVID. So that was the purpose of the laboratory mice on site. Mr. Prado did not add whether any of these COVID tests had been given or sold to the public. And it sounds like there is a chance that there were contaminated, I was reading another article saying that there were contaminated COVID tests and contaminated pregnancy tests that probably came out of this lab and went on the market in California and wherever else, you know, you're going to have those. Maybe they get shipped across the country to New Hampshire. Who knows? But either way, there was a second article that I read that I almost pulled up but didn't, where it talked about, and maybe they'll go into it in this one, I don't remember, but it talked about there's a potential that people have been using contaminated COVID tests, which are gross because up your nose it goes, or whatever else you do. Pregnancy tests, I mean, you pee on them, it's a little less, but at the same time, they could be contaminated and disgusting from this. So would you want to take that risk? Probably not. They also found a wide array of vials containing biomaterials, including blood and tissue, as well as many other unlabeled chemicals, some of which were found to contain the coronavirus, as well as bacterial and virus pathogens, including HIV, chlamydia, I never can pronounce that one right. I don't like to think about it. E. coli, streptococcus pneumonia, so strep throat, right? Hepatitis B and C, herpes, 1 in 5, rubella, and malaria. So everything they tell you to get your kids vaccinated against, for some reason, was in that lab. That's an image from the lab. Yeah, that looks, court documents showed chemicals, lab devices, and furniture were improperly stored in the unassuming warehouse. Yeah, that doesn't look very official to me. The black market lab was not licensed to operate there, and white hazardous chemicals have been properly disposed of. Officials have yet to reveal specifics about who was running the lab, who erected it, and what the purpose of it was. In addition to finding nearly 1,000 lab mice, either dead or in distress, court documents revealed that investigators also found refrigerators and freezers with blood in containers labeled as serum or plasma. The officials were tasked with determining the provenance of the mysterious lab, which was found to be run by Prestige Biotech, registered in Las Vegas. City officials identified Ziquan Yao as the company's president, who said Prestige Biotech shifted operations to the Reedley warehouse that was previously run by a now defunct company called Universal Meditech Inc. Prestige was identified as UMI's successor, according to court documents. But when officials were tasked with searching locations tied to either company, they turned up at abandoned offices or found linked addresses back in China they could not verify. City officials maintain that those operating under the name Prestige Biotech have not been forthcoming with information, though the investigation is ongoing and may turn up more answers down the line. Mrs. Ziba said, "There are no more biologicals, there are no more mice, but we'll still see us abating 30 freezers and fridges, medical equipment, and all sorts of furniture in there. They still see some activity, nothing hazardous at this point. Some of our federal partners still have active investigations going. I can only speak to the building side of it." So that's interesting that that's going on. Let me see if I could pull up the second article that I was thinking about real quick. California lab found. It was a Daily Mail article, I think. See if it works. No, not California Dog Lab. They're like, they're literally like, okay, here it is. We'll look at this one too real quick. I can't remember if it was shorter than the one I just did or not. It's just as long, but we'll fly through this one. I wanted to just pull it up because it had a little bit more updated information, but I chose to go with the other one. And now we're gonna pull this one up anyway. So let's hop over there. Thousands of Americans potentially exposed to toxic COVID and pregnancy tests made at Chinese-run biolab in California, which is what I was talking about. The warehouse was filled with thousands of vials of disease, blood, and tissues. Disease experts raised fears of pathogens escaping from the slovenly factory. Tens of thousands of Americans may have used COVID and pregnancy tests made at a filthy Chinese-run biolab that housed dangerous viruses like HIV and malaria. The research facility was busted earlier this year in the sleepy California town of Reedley, where investigators found disease-riddled mice and hundreds of samples of pathogens, blood, and dubious chemicals piled up in storage boxes and fridges. So they weren't even like in fridges necessarily either. Some of them were just in boxes. That's safe. The lab was run, we know that. Dr. William Schaffner, a professor of infectious diseases at Vanderbilt University, told dailymail.com that there was a contamination risk because the tests were made in an environment that was extraordinarily bad. Earlier this year, the FDA recalled 56,300 Universal MedTech COVID tests that were sold across 2 states earlier this year because they had never obtained approval to be sold in the first place. Wow. The recall announcement issued in February did not mention contamination, and the agency declined to give additional details when approached by dailymail.com. So those are some of the tests that were recalled, I guess. So if you have those in your home, get rid of them. And then This is an image. Several of the 32 freezers containing biological materials and dangerous pathogens found were malfunctioning as power had been cut to the building. So that's just festering disease, blood, and nastiness. Investigators also found containers of plasma and blood of unknown origin for unknown purposes. So those are containers of blood and plasma. That's absolutely disgusting. Yeah, just sitting there and festering. The FDA, which regulates medical devices as well as facilities where they produce, did not disclose how many of those 56,300 unapproved tests actually made it into the hands of consumers. So we know some did, we just don't know how many did, where they, who has them. Could there be in the packaging also potentially some surface contamination with an infectious agent? I suppose that's possible in an environment that's as extraordinarily bad as this one, said Dr. Schaffner. He added, you cannot imagine that a diagnostic test, which has to adhere to certain performance characteristics, could be produced in an environment that's so sloppy that you could rely on the results. You would get false positives, false negatives, and the result would simply be unreliable. I don't think that's the worry here, is the false positives and the false negatives. I think the worry is the bacterial contamination that could come from these items. Pregnancy test. Yeah, no, they don't go in anywhere, but they are close to sensitive areas, right? You could get, they just said clamdida or whatever it is, chlamydia. You could get that from one of the pregnancy tests if things go wrong bacterially with it. COVID test, shove it up your nose. You could get something bacterial from that. It's the more surface contact stuff that I would be worried about than like, it might be a false positive or a false negative. The odds of you getting false somethings on those tests anyway are very high. Like a pregnancy test, I think you can get false negatives, but normally you cannot get a false positive. I know some people have, but like for the most part, statistically, that doesn't really happen very often. Yeah, I'd be worried about contamination and bacterial diseases. An online forum of residents. Now the residents of Ridley, home to about 25,000 people, are concerned about possibly contaminated tests, confused, frustrated at the local government's perceived inaction, given that the lab was discovered in December 2022, but only raided earlier this spring. So does that mean it was still running? Does that mean it was shut down and all that stuff was festering in there? That's creepy. One of the residents, named Ruby Rodriguez, sounds like a superhero, said, how is it they didn't know? So any business that comes in and pays, that's not, and that it's no follow-up, really? Someone needs to answer this? That was a confusing statement. People are also clamoring for answers about who the lab employees were. Records of employees have been withheld from officials. At what level of risk there was of an employee either mistakenly or knowingly introducing a pathogen to the residents of Reedley and the surrounding Fresno County. Reedley resident Christina Elliman said, there is more to it. We just know that they want us to know. I don't feel like they've kept me safe. As exactly what I said. Another resident named Melissa Womack-Berry addressed city manager Nicole Ziba directly, saying, why weren't the citizens of Reedley notified by mail or local newspaper for the matter? And what is the correct date of discovery? Was anything coming out of that illegal garden hose hookup? It wasn't even surrounded by keep out signs or hazardous chemicals warnings. I feel so let down by our city and county officials, and there's nothing political in my feelings. Well, you live in California where everything is political and your government is going to let you down. They all knew about this, and we the people had no clue what was happening in our town. You knew about this, Nicole, and kept it secret until it was finally revealed in a local news outlet out of Fresno. Was there even an open to the public Reedley City Council meeting? So many questions regarding this biological waste disposal, and we can't even get the truth. We can do better, Reedley. A third person said, this is so scary, and how many other buildings are out there that no longer used by the packing houses that were once used? Who knows what else might be out there? We need to move on this and find out. I sure hope and pray we're not exposed from anything that has been there for who knows how long. Very, very disturbing. It literally just sounds like how COVID started and all that. Investigators who investigated the facility in March discovered COVID and pregnancy tests there, suggesting the lab was making and possibly distributing them. Among the viruses and bacteria that were labeled, inspectors found Hep B and C, dengue, HIV, 2 strains of herpes, respiratory RSV, tuberculosis, meningitis, rubella, coronavirus, and malaria. A wide array of vials in the facility were also identified as containing biomaterials, including blood and tissue, from the unidentified sources, as well as many other unlabeled chemicals. There's malaria in what looks like a tackle box. Among hundreds of vials of the infectious viruses and bacteria, many of which were stored improperly in shoddy freezers, were samples of malaria, shown here alongside Chinese characters. Other infectious agents found included strains of the herpes virus bacterium that causes meningitis, chlamydia, COVID-19, and HIV. Yep. So, yeah, it sounds like it's pretty much the end of the article. Sounds like everybody is pretty much concerned about that one. I don't know what my computer's doing, so I'm going to switch that over before it gets weird. I think it just like blew up an ad and tried to play it. But yeah, understandably, everyone in that town is concerned. I think everyone in America is kind of concerned. It seems a little fishy. I wonder if the left is going to be like, that didn't happen. What are you talking about? But you know, there you are. We're going to hop over to the other Daily Mail article that I had pulled up about Meta removing news from Facebook and Instagram in Canada after Trudeau, gotta love Trudeau, passes law enforcing tech giants to pay media outlets for their content. Also, in other news, Justin Trudeau and his wife, Sophie, have separated. And there's rumors that he's going to be coming out as gay. So, we'll see. We'll see if that comes true. Man, I should have had more water before I started this because I can feel my throat tightening. Yeah, I'm going to be chugging some water and coffee when I'm done. All right, I'm going to show you a wonderful picture. Make your skin crawl. Boom. Trudeau and Zuck. Meta confirmed Thursday it plans to comply with the Online News Act by ending news availability on Facebook and Instagram for its Canadian users. And I didn't have time to go into this, but Daily Wire as well found proof, I guess, that they've been targeted and censored and like kept out of things. That's another thing that I need to jump more into. We'll see. Maybe I'll do that one later. Canada's Senate passed a bill Thursday that will require Google and Meta to pay for media outlets for news content. Meta would not offer details about the timeline for that move, but said it will pull local news from the site before the Online News Act takes effect. This was June 23rd, 2023. I picked this one because it gave a lot of information. So it is an older article, but it gives information. Post Millennial, I believe, posted that they're already starting to see their stuff censored in Canada. They also, like, their employees can't access things, the ones who live in Canada, and they're getting like really like, oh, okay, this isn't good. Meta would not offer details about the timeline for that move, which now, but it will pull local news from its site before the Online News Act takes effect. The bill will come into force 6 months after it receives royal assent. We have repeatedly shared that in order to comply with Bill C-18, which is passed today in Parliament, content from news outlets, including news publishers and broadcasters, will no longer be available to people accessing our platforms in Canada, said Lisa LaVenture, head communications for Meta in Canada. Canada's Senate passed a bill that would require Google and Meta to pay media outlets for news content they share or otherwise repurpose on their platforms. So if I was in Canada and I went to share a Fox News article or a CNN article, you would get like a "this is not available in your country" pop up because Meta and them, they don't want to pay for that information. People in Canada are kind of freaking out, understandably, because they're like, excuse me, you can't do that. But somebody like me who is a nobody on YouTube, my stuff will still be shareable, I think, because it's not cracking down on that. It's cracking down on big outlets like Fox, CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, all of those things. And I do wonder if part of it is because Trudeau has complained about the influence of American media on Canadians. He had a statement where he was talking about how, like, I don't remember the exact statements, so don't quote me, and it's not a direct quote, but he was saying something about how, like, Muslims actually love the LGBTQ community, like, they're actually for it. But it's just in America, they're not, because they've been brainwashed by Americans. And it's like, no, if you actually look at that religion, if you go overseas, you read the Quran, they are not for that lifestyle. It's not just that it's an Americanized version of Islam. It is not allowed in Islam. Justin Trudeau is just a nutcase. All right. So the bill, which is set to become law, was passed amid a standoff between Prime Minister Trudeau's government and Silicon Valley tech giants. Ottawa has said the law creates a level playing field between online advertising giants and the shrinking news industry. Canadian Heritage Minister Pablo Rodriguez has promised to push back on what he describes as threats from Facebook and Google to remove journalism from their platforms. Legacy media and broadcasters have praised the bill, which promotes to enhance fairness in the digital news marketplace and help bring more money for shrinking newsrooms. Tech giants, including Meta and Google, have been blamed in the past for disrupting and dominating the advertising industry, eclipsing smaller traditional players. So we're entering an age where you have to pay for information, and it definitely sounds very Orwellian. It definitely sounds like Nazi Germany. It definitely sounds like something that should not be happening in the Western world today. Laura Scafidi, a spokesperson for the minister, said Rodriguez was set to have a meeting Thursday afternoon with Google, which has hinted that removing news links from its popular search engine is a possibility. The company didn't provide comment on the matter. Why is there just a giant picture of Trudeau? Meta is already undergoing a test that blocks news for up to 5% of its Canadian users, and Google ran similar tests earlier this year. Obviously, by now, it's escalated to the point where they're starting to enact this stuff, so it's just not showing up at all for people. The Online News Act requires both companies to enter an agreement with news publishers to pay them for news content that appears on their sites. If it helps tech giants generate money, the tech giants do not have obligations under the Act immediately. After Bill C-18 passes, as part of this process, all details will be made public before any tech giant is designated under the Act. Giant picture of Trudeau for some reason. Canada isn't the only country looking at laws that could force big tech to pay news operations. Australia passed a world-first law in 2021 that compelled big tech companies to strike deals with media outlets to compensate them for content. Facebook initially blocked all news on its platform in that country while the legislation was being debated in the Senate. The historic move also inadvertently blocked non-media pages, including some run by government and emergency services. Facebook restored news to feeds after the government agreed not to apply the code to the company and others such as Google if they entered into licensing agreements with media publishers. Lawmakers said in December that bill, which led to more than 30 deals between tech and firms and media outlets, has largely been a success. In addition, Meta is threatening to pull news content from its platforms in California if the state passes a bill forcing big tech companies to pay publishers a journalism usage fees. Wow. The proposed California Journalism Preservation Act would oblige social media companies and firms, including Google, to pay a cut of advertising revenue to news publishers whose work appears on their websites. The bill is designed to reverse a decline in the local news industry, with publishers who receive payments forced to invest 70% of the money into news, journalists, and support staff. Meta said Wednesday the act would create a slush fund that benefits large media companies and threaten to pull news from Facebook and Instagram accounts accessed in California, where it is headquartered. So basically, they're realizing that legacy media is dying and they're panicking and they're trying to fund it somehow because you have so many people who do independent journalism. You have people that are just like, this is utter bullcrap. I'm not going to listen to this. We're going to go find the real story and we're going to present it unbiased. You have people like that. They're starting to take the helm and all of these things are dying. So they're like, we got to fund ourselves somehow. We'll make people pay. So I have a feeling in Canada and California, you're going to have a ton of contraband journalism where it's like secret, like I'll figure out how to share news information. But yeah, so that's happening. That's terrifying. It's already going into effect because, again, this article is a little over a month old, but it was just the one with the most information that I felt like sharing. So now we're going to look at the Hollywood Reporter. Where it talks about how just people hate The Witcher and people also hate Secret Invasion, which I've heard is boring, and then it just gets more boring, which is sad because I was kind of hoping to watch that. By the way, finally watched Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and I absolutely loved it. It's really sad because, like, Marvel, for me, since Endgame, has been like, Spider-Man was fun, No Way Home was fun, and then dud. Shang-Chi was kind of okay, but I don't ever need to watch it again. Dud. In the gutter. Thor, Love and Thunder. Dud. Hey, Guardians 3 was actually pretty good. Dud. Like, that's just how it's been. And it's really sad. Like, I had low expectations and I loved it. And it kind of is like, it felt like old Marvel again, kind of like phase 2-ish. Maybe I could do like a better review on it, but it's also old at this point, so I don't know if anyone would want to watch that. Anyway though, Hollywood Reporter, let's go there. So, The Witcher, Secret Invasion. The Witcher and Secret Invasion. Disappoint as some creatives blame fans. What do you do when your creation sucks so bad that nobody likes it? You obviously blame the fans and not yourself, and take responsibility for poor writing, abandoning source material, and destroying the storylines. My husband has read all of the Witcher books. He's on his second go through of them, loves them. I've read some of it. He's played the games. I'm playing the third game. Season 1 of the show, granted, watch with caution. Just watch with caution. There's a lot. But you can fast forward things, whatever. Season 1, I feel like, was fairly accurate to the first book, where it just kind of hops around. But even then, my husband was like, no, there are still things that are not. But I loved season 1. Season 2, it was all right. Season 3, we haven't finished yet. We have 3 episodes left, but it just was boring. Didn't make any sense. The last episode before they took the break was kind of interesting, but even then, I was just like, what is this? The stupid Blood Origins show was absolute trash. I liked Nightmare of the Wolf, the cartoon, but really, it's just bad. It's like Rings of Power. It's just bad. And what did Rings of Power do? What did Amazon do? Well, it's the fans. It's not us. Our show's perfect. It was dropped by God into your laps. You peasants just don't understand it. That's literally what they did. That is what Hollywood does now. When something comes back as a flop, instead of saying, well, maybe we should reevaluate things, what do? They blame the fans, and they just keep going, and they just dig deeper. And it's so frustrating. What does it mean, if anything, that so many big TV franchises shows are stumbling at the same time? I have a feeling Witcher is going... So, for example, Witcher is probably going to get its season 4. And then I have a feeling that season 4 will either be not watched because Henry Cavill left because there was too much conflict between what he was like, nope, this is what the book says, we need to do this, and the showrunners being like, no, we're rewriting all that and we're doing this instead. That's why he left. So, part of why he left. So, I have a feeling season 3, he leaves the show. We have Liam Hemsworth coming in. Liam Hemsworth probably does not care. He probably just is like, cool, I'm in this role now. And he probably will have no conflict with the showrunners and just smooth sailing, which means they're going to add even more woke stuff than was already in it. They're going to change the source material. They're going to go from the source material, which Henry fought against, keeping it for the source material. He wanted it to be the source material. The showrunners did not. So now that they don't have that headbutt to go up against, they're going to just do whatever they want. So my prediction is season 3 bombed. Season 4 will happen, but it will probably get canceled before it's finished, where they might get to like that stopping point that they've been doing lately, where Netflix will air like 4 episodes, month break, and then like the last 3, or however they've been doing it. They did that with Stranger Things. What I feel like is going to happen is probably around that break before the season 4 finale stuff and the last 3 like episodes, they'll probably announce that it's getting canceled. That's what I think is going to happen. Anyway, The Witcher showrunner Lauren Hirsch promised to give fans the most heroic send-off in the season 3 for departing star Henry Cavill. Instead, the Netflix fantasy eagerly anticipated final 3 episodes of the season released last week, which I don't care that they're spoilers because I don't care. I already know what happens. I don't care that much. I'm so turned off to the show that I don't care that much, that I've already seen everything that happens and I don't care. Literally had Cavill's Geralt of Rivia recovering from injuries in bed before rousing himself for a final fight. The season's IMDb scores plummeted in its final 2 episodes, earned the lowest numbers of the entire series. Some critics were harsh as well. Cavill deserved a better exit, wrote AV Club. The Verge called the season a wasted opportunity. Meanwhile, over Disney Plus, Marvel's Secret Invasion has been similarly ripped as one of the most popular studio's biggest stumbles. Its finale earned a 7% score on Rotten Tomatoes, wow, and headlines dubbed the project starring Samuel L. Jackson the worst reviewed Marvel project ever. Even more than She-Hulk, though? Because She-Hulk was bad, but then again, it was being review bombed by people that were like, it was phenomenally feminist, so I guess maybe not. The reactions follow what was considered a disappointing 3rd season for Disney Plus's acclaimed Star Wars drama The Mandalorian, which took a sharp dive in its Rotten Tomatoes score from the low 90s for the first couple seasons to 57% in the spring. Mando then lost its usual Emmys Best Drama nomination slot. Yeah, so I watched the first 3 episodes of the 3rd season of Mandalorian. I may have watched the 4th, but I don't remember because it all blends. And then I stopped because I think I stopped at the episode where for some reason they shifted the story and it was about nobody scientists. The acting was some of the worst acting I've ever seen. And it just was very bizarre. I could go off on it, but I'm not going to. Outside of the genre space over on Paramount Plus, the latest drama from prolific Yellowstone hitmaker Taylor Sheridan, Special Ops Lioness, seems to be stumbling a bit. I've heard that one's not good either. Out of the gate too, with a weak critic score 57% and an audience score that's solid 73%, yet far lower than other dramas. In a couple of these cases, top creatives push back and seem to blame the fans, you and me. Rings of Power did it too. The Witcher executive producer Tom Baginski put the onus on American fans for controversial changes to the show's storylines that have simplified its adaptation from author Andrzej Sapkowski's stories. A divergence Cavill previously suggested frustrated him as well. When a series is made for a huge mass of viewers with different experiences from different parts of the world, and larger parts of them are American, the simplifications not only make sense, they are necessary. So he's saying Americans are so simple-minded that they can't understand Andrzej Sapkowski's stuff. I'm understanding it fine. I'm reading the books. I'm American. Keep it the same. Where'd I go? He told Polish news site Wybrysa, "It is painful for us, and me too." No, it's not. You wanted to do this. Don't lie to us. The higher level of nuance and complexity will have a smaller range. It won't reach people. Previously, Banksy suggested the stories also need to be simplified due to young viewers being inspired by only emotions rather than plot after being raised on YouTube and TikTok. Young viewers shouldn't be watching The Witcher, is all I'm going to say here. It's rated MA for a lot of reasons. It is not for young viewers. So the fact that I did notice that actually. Season 3 felt very much dumbed down, where it felt, and somebody said this too online, it felt very CW. It didn't feel like season 1 or even season 2, which wasn't great, but was still somewhat okay. It did feel like a CW fantasy adaptation. So I can see that. Secret Invasion director Ali Selim seemed to suggest Marvel's rabid fans had outsized expectations during an interview with Variety. "I don't feel bad about mixed reviews," he said. "Marvel has very devoted, even rabid fan base who have expectations, and when their expectations aren't fulfilled, they move in the other direction, they give it a thumbs down. So it's a tricky thing. I would love it if everybody loved it, but I also don't have that expectation myself. So I feel great about the response to it." He then asked, "Is it our job to fulfill their expectations?" And then in parentheses, the article goes, "Well, yeah, that's literally the job." Like, yeah, if people don't like the content you're putting out, they're not going to come back to it. You have to feed the fans, and not just like fan service, like what Star Wars did with its reboots, because that was over the top ridiculous. Same thing with Jurassic World. You got to feed the fans, but you've got to do it in a way that's classy and is going to work. It's as if franchise fatigue that's been plaguing big screen superhero films is now extended to the TV. Except in these cases, it's not as if viewers didn't tune into the shows. Witcher fans, for instance, were rather eager to see Cavill's final episodes, so much they were disappointed with the result. The slump, if it can be fairly called that, comes at an interesting time. After years of streamers demanding more, faster content, and arguably stretching thin the creative community at the same time, the years-long TV peak glut recently seemed to legitimately peak amid studio belt-tightening and cutbacks. The recent seasons seem to represent some of the last episodes from a crazed push for content just before studios began tapping the brakes, and then with dual writers and actor strikes outright slammed on those brakes. There is some evidence the creative teams behind all these shows have more piled on their plate than ever before. Sheridan, rather famously, has been working on a multitude of shows at the same time. Marvel has been pumping out so much TV content for the past couple of years that even Disney CEO Bob Iger suggested the shows have hurt the brand due to diluted focus and attention. No, it's because they're woke pieces of crap that nobody likes. Disney Plus announced 10 Star Wars shows in late 2020, with Mandalorian writer-director Dave Filoni now splitting time with upcoming Ahsoka, which I have no desire to watch. I might, just because I'm curious, but it just... not interested. The showrunner, Jon Favreau, has stuck primarily with Mando, and Witcher team had a spin-off, Blood Origin, which flopped in December, and producers have teased that other spin-offs are in the works. Blood Origin was so bad, we didn't finish it. We just looked up how it ended. I think we watched the first 2 episodes, and there were 2 more. Originally, there were supposed to be 8, and then they're like, you gotta cut that. They cut it down to 6. You gotta cut that again. They cut it down to 4. So it's just terrible. It doesn't make any sense, and it kind of retcons a lot of Sapkowski's stuff that he wrote. it's such a disservice to the universe. Of course, each show journey is unique, so it might be overly generalizing to declare too much TV is making for worse TV, even among top franchises. Premium cable and streaming shows used to feel, well, special. Lately, content has felt increasingly like more expensive versions of the big five broadcast shows they so devastatingly disrupted. Money can always buy better special effects, but cannot always purchase better scripts. And it turns out, because a company is only making 10 episodes of a show every 2 years, or in this case, Secret Invasion 6, it is no longer a guarantee the results are going to be fantastic or even merely good, especially when creatives are helping shepherd several other projects at the same time. So that's the thing with, say, like, the Marvel Netflix shows, Daredevil, Punisher, Jessica Jones. I'm not going to go through them all, but you get the gist. They did, what was it, the 8 to 10 episode seasons? It worked so well because that was kind of new at the time, where they were going from network TV, which would be like 22 episodes of a ton of filler. And then sometimes you'd have at the end of the episode, Flash would do this, the CW's Flash. Oh, this tie-in that later on in the season is going to come up. And then they'd continually do that to build to something, but it took 20 to 22 episodes to do it. Downton Abbey, I want to say their first season had 6 episodes, and then I think they jumped to 10 episodes every season, 8 to 10, whatever it was. It worked really well. Again, that was a British show though, so they were a little bit ahead with that. At what it used to be is that by shrinking it down and cutting out unnecessarily rabbit trails and storylines, you were able to put bigger budget into actors, bigger budget into story, bigger budget into everything, to the point where you were able to effectively tell a better story in a shorter span and have that story be immersive. But we don't have that anymore because now they're just taking those budgets and pumping out crap. Ow. Sorry, I just pulled something in my neck. That was fun. All that said, there's the case to be made that while some major franchises have had recent disappointing seasons, on average, big genre streaming shows are better than ever. The Emmys had an unprecedented 5 fantasy show nominated in the Best Series category this year, HBO's The Last of Us. That started out really good. First episode, I was like, whoa. And then second episode, I was like, oh, nah, not as good. Third episode, I was like, what did I just watch? I hate the show. And then I continued, and it just fell off. I just didn't really like it. It was fun watching it, but it just was... House of the Dragon, fantastic. Loved it. I don't really have anything bad to say about it. See, House of the Dragon is what Rings of Power could have been, or The Witcher seasons 2 and 3 could have been. They should take notes. Netflix's Wednesday, did not watch that. Everyone says I should. Andor, also have not watched that, but people say that I should. And curiously, Obi-Wan Kenobi, that was a steaming pile of garbage and should never be spoken of again. If you want a good story about Obi-Wan Kenobi on Tatooine, before the prequels, read Kenobi, which is one of the Star Wars Legends non-canonical books now. Fantastic. Loved it. It's great. I read it right around when the Disney switch happened. So literally, like, they announced an Obi-Wan Kenobi book called Kenobi. And then they were like, just kidding, it's not canon anymore. But still read it. It's good. It's much better than the crap that Obi-Wan Kenobi was. I hated that show so much. So maybe it's not that big franchise shows are suffering under the pressure of studio content demands, but rather that much is being made that is hands down terrific and not everything can be. Yeah, I don't. I'm dying. Anyway, I don't know. I just think that all of these showrunners should take notes from House of the Dragon. And granted, I own Fire and Blood, the book. I own the big hardcover copy of it. The book's like this thick. It's dense. There's a lot to it. The story that House of the Dragon is just a sliver of that book. And they have taken some liberties to make it more interesting, to make it, but they work. They don't retcon anything. Like with Witcher, retcons everything. Rings of Power, retcon. It just destroys everything. I could go off on Rings of Power again, and I'm not going to, because I should probably wrap this thing up, but all of these shows have the same problem. But anyway, I'm going to sign off now. I kind of forgot what I was going to say, but I'm going to end this stream and I'm going to upload it so that it's ready for 6 p.m. Again, if you want to watch the Daily Wire Friends fan podcast, I'll be there at 9 p.m. tonight live. This will probably end around 7. So you got a couple hours and then you can hop on over there and watch us there. I got to charge my lights as well because I don't want them to die on me because they've done that before. So have a great afternoon. Again, you can follow me at fearmeitsbre on most of the platforms. And I will try and hop on again tomorrow. Tomorrow's kind of funky. Wednesday's kind of a busy day for us. And if I'm not on tomorrow, I am going to, the plan will be to jump on Thursday. So I will see everybody next time and have a great rest of your day.